Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive with us. You know, we always take a stack of your sources and find the most important takeaways so you're well informed on the topic. And this one is all about cybersecurity. Get this. I was prepping for this deep dive, and I learned about how a stolen phone can lead to like a shocking video going viral years later. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about how criminals are hacking you, not your devices, to get to your devices. It's really fascinating. So to help us break all of this down, we have an expert with us today who's going to help us understand these sources and really connect the dots and reveal the so what. So let's dive right into it. Starting with the first concept that kind of blew my mind, data persistence. You know, we always think that deleting something means it's gone forever, but one of the sources that you shared has this chilling case study that proves otherwise.
It does. This case involved a stolen phone and a video that was recorded years before the theft. And somehow, that video resurfaced on the stolen phone, went viral,
Yeah.
and caused, serious consequences for everyone involved.
Wow. Okay. That's unsettling, you know. I think we've all got things on our phones that we wouldn't want broadcast to the world. So this is about way more than just protecting our devices. It's about protecting like our reputations, our relationships, our whole lives. But how is that even possible? I thought when you delete something, it means it's gone.
Well, the truth is that digital information, it rarely disappears completely. So when you delete something,
Yeah.
it's more like hiding it, Remnants of that data can linger on your device storage. And with the right tools and the right expertise, it's possible to retrieve it. And we're not just talking about embarrassing videos here. Think about financial records, medical information, private messages. All of this stuff has serious implications.
Yeah, actually, you know what? I remember one time I had to replace my hard drive, and the technician offered to securely wipe the old one for me for an extra fee. And at the time, I thought that was kind of a ripoff, but now I'm starting to understand why that's so important. So what other ways can data be recovered, even after we think it's gone?
There are a few ways. There are forensic techniques, which are used by law enforcement and cybersecurity professionals to retrieve data from devices, even if it's been deleted or overwritten. And then there are data remnants, which are like tiny fragments of information that can be pieced together, kind of like a digital jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah.
And then don't forget about cloud backups. So if you're backing up your data to the cloud, that information could still be accessible even if you wipe your device.
Oh, I see. So we need to be thinking about data security on multiple levels, like our devices, our online accounts, even the cloud. It's a whole ecosystem we need to protect. Okay, so that's data persistence. What else should we be aware of?
Well, another key takeaway from your sources is the psychology behind cybercrime. So it's not always about like sophisticated hacking techniques. It's about understanding how criminals exploit human vulnerabilities to get to our information.
Yeah, they're hacking people, not just devices. And one of the articles that you shared was this crazy story about a chief minister's daughter in India who lost money through a social engineering scam. I was reading this and I could not believe how easily she was manipulated. It made me wonder if I would fall in for it too.
It's a really compelling example of how these scams work. So the scammer posed as an army officer who was interested in a sofa she was selling. He even sent like photos in uniform and what looked like his ID card.
Wow. So he was playing the long game, building trust before going in for the kill.
Exactly. Then he said that he'd send 10,000 rupees as an advance payment, but he kept accidentally sending payment requests instead.
Wait, so he was asking her to send him money? That's crazy.
Yes. He kept repeating 10,000 rupees, almost like a hypnotic suggestion, to keep her focused on that amount. While he was siphoning money from her account, he also played on her emotions, like apologizing for the mistakes, even pretending that his child was sick. He kept escalating the amount, offering to send more to cover his errors, but each time, it was actually her sending more money.
Oh my gosh, that is terrifying. He really played on her emotions and her desire to be helpful. And I know I can be a bit too trusting sometimes, especially when someone seems genuinely apologetic. So what kind of red flags should we be looking out for to avoid falling into these traps?
Well, one big red flag is pressure to act quickly. So if someone is pushing you to make a quick decision, especially when money is involved, take a deep breath and think critically. Don't let anyone rush you, because that's exactly what they want you to do. They want you to make a hasty decision without thinking it through.
Yeah. I can think of a few times when I felt that pressure. Like, one time, I almost clicked on a link in an email, and it looked like it was from my bank, and I was about to enter my login details, but then something just felt off, and I stopped.
It's great that you listen to your gut feeling.
Yeah.
It's crucial to question your assumptions and to verify information through official channels. Never click on links or download attachments from unexpected sources. And remember, if something sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Right. Good advice. It's so easy to get caught up in the moment, but we need to train ourselves to slow down and think critically. Are there any other situations where we should be extra cautious?
Absolutely. Be wary of anything that feels emotionally charged. So scammers. They often try to exploit our fear,
Right.
our excitement, or
Mhm.
sense of urgency to get us to act without thinking, for example. They might say your account has been compromised or that you've won a prize. Don't let your emotions cloud your judgment. If something seems off, it probably is.
Okay, so it's all about being aware of the psychological tactics that play and not letting our emotions get the better of us. It's like they're playing a game, and we need to know the rules to win.
Exactly. And another rule of the game is to be skeptical of requests that seem out of the ordinary. So, for example, if someone asks you to scan a QR code
Mm.
for an incoming payment or to click on a link to receive money, that's a major red flag. Legitimate businesses and organizations, they rarely operate that way. Always verify requests through official channels before taking any action.
Okay. Be wary of pressure tactics, emotional manipulation, and unusual requests. It sounds like we need to be a bit more suspicious in general.
Well, it's not about being paranoid. It's about being aware and informed. The more you understand about the tactics that criminals use, the better equipped you'll be to spot them and protect yourself.
Right. Forewarned is forearmed.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about something that we all use, free services like Google, Facebook, WhatsApp, TikTok. You know we love the convenience and the access they offer, but what's the real cost of this free access?
Right. That's a great question. And your sources reveal the true value of user data. One even compares the valuations of these tech giants to the GDPs of entire countries.
Whoa. Seriously, our data is that valuable.
Absolutely. These companies are collecting massive amounts of data about us, far beyond our names and email addresses.
So what kind of data are we talking about exactly?
Thick location data, browsing history, search queries, messages, photos, videos. The list goes on and on. They're even collecting data on the sounds in our environments through our microphones.
Hold on, they're listening in on our conversations.
They're using our microphones to gather information about our daily lives, our habits, our preferences. They can even infer things like our emotional state, our health, our relationships, based on the sounds that they pick up. This data helps them build these detailed profiles of us, which they can then use for targeted advertising, personalized recommendations, and even predicting our future behavior.
Wow. So in a way, we are paying for these free services with our data. It's the currency of the digital world. But knowing how much data they're collecting, it makes you wonder, are we really in control of our digital lives? Or are we just pawns in a much larger game?
That's the question we all need to ask ourselves. What level of data collection are we comfortable with? What are we willing to pay? For convenience and access, and most importantly, what steps can we take to reclaim control over our data?
That's a really powerful thought. You know, it's not about rejecting technology altogether. It's about being informed and making conscious choices about how we engage with it. But before we get into that, let's take a quick, oh wait, no, we're not doing breaks this time. We're just going to keep going. So let's just keep going then. And we'll talk about some practical tips for safeguarding our data and privacy right after this.
Sounds good to me. So now that we understand the value of our data, let's talk about some practical steps we can take to protect it. One of the simplest yet most effective things you can do is to enable two-factor authentication on all your accounts.
Two-factor authentication. I've heard of that, but I've never really understood what it was or why it was so important.
It's basically adding an extra layer of security to your accounts. In addition to your password, you'll need to enter a unique code that's sent to your phone or email address.
Oh,
This makes it much harder for hackers to access your accounts even if they have your password.
so it's having a double lock on your digital door? That makes sense.
Yeah.
I've been putting it off because it seems like a hassle, but honestly, the peace of mind is probably worth it. What else can we do to protect ourselves?
Another crucial step is to be mindful of the apps and websites that you grant access to your Google account. A lot of apps request access to your contacts or your location or even your entire Google Drive.
Yeah.
And it's important to review these permissions regularly and revoke access to any apps you no longer use or trust.
I'm definitely guilty of just clicking allow without really thinking about it. It's so easy to do, especially when you're excited to use a new app. But now that you mention it, I'm going to go through my Google account settings and do a major cleanup.
Yeah, it's a good habit to get into. You'd be surprised how many apps have access to your data without you even realizing it. Speaking of access, let's talk about shared accounts and passwords.
Okay, this is something I've been wondering about. I share a streaming service password with my sister, and a few of us at work use the same login for a shared project management tool. Is that risky?
It can be. If one person's account is compromised, everyone who shares that password is vulnerable. It's like giving multiple people keys to the same house. If one key falls into the wrong hands, the entire house is at risk.
That's a great analogy. I never thought of it that way. So, what's the solution? Should we each have separate accounts for everything?
Ideally, yes, but I understand that's not always practical. If you must share accounts, use a password manager to generate and store unique, strong passwords for each shared account that way. If one account is compromised, the damage is limited.
Okay, password managers. Those are on my to-do list as well.
Yeah.
I keep hearing how important they are, but I haven't gotten around to setting one up yet. Any recommendations?
There are many great options available. Some are free, while others offer premium features for a subscription. Do some research and choose one that fits your needs and budget.
Okay, noted. So we've talked about two-factor authentication, reviewing app permissions, and using strong, unique passwords. What about public Wi-Fi? I know that can be a security risk, but I'm often on the go, and I need to use public Wi-Fi to get work done.
Right, public Wi-Fi networks are often unsecured, which means your data could be intercepted by hackers if you must use public Wi-Fi. A VPN is essential.
Right, VPNs, I've heard those mentioned as well, but I'm not entirely sure what they do or how they work.
A VPN creates a secure, encrypted connection between your device and the internet. It's like creating a tunnel for your data, making it much harder for hackers to intercept it.
So it's like having a bodyguard for your data when you're out in the public digital world. That makes sense, but aren't all VPNs the same?
Not all VPNs are created equal. Some free VPNs might actually be collecting and selling your data. It's crucial to choose a reputable VPN provider with a strong track record of privacy and security.
Okay, so do your research and choose wisely. Got it. This is all great advice, but it's a lot to keep track of. It can feel a bit overwhelming at times.
I understand cybersecurity can seem daunting, but remember, small steps can make a big difference. Start by implementing one or two of these tips and gradually build from there.
That's a good point. It's about progress, not perfection. Now, speaking of data protection, what happens when we want to get rid of an old device? I usually just do a factory reset. Is that enough to protect my data?
Unfortunately, no. A factory reset might delete your files and apps, but it doesn't necessarily erase your data completely. Data can persist even after formatting a device. Specialized tools are needed for secure data erasure.
Really, I had no idea. So even if I delete everything and reset my phone, someone could still recover my data. That's unsettling.
Yes, and one of the sources you shared tells this cautionary tale about this girl whose embarrassing video was recovered from a stolen phone years later, even after she thought she had erased it.
Oh, that's awful. I can't imagine how violating that must feel.
It's a stark reminder that our digital footprints can come back to haunt us, even when we think we've erased them. So what can we do to ensure our data is gone for good when we get rid of a device?
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering. What are our options?
Multiple formats are a good start, but they're not foolproof. Consider using professional data wiping services. They use specialized software to overwrite your data multiple times, making it virtually impossible to recover.
Professional data wiping services. I've never heard of those before. Where can I find them?
You can find them online or at local computer repair shops. They're becoming increasingly common as people become more aware of the importance of secure data erasure.
Okay, so professional wiping is one option. What about trade-in programs? Do they handle data securely? I'm thinking trading in my old phone soon.
It's important to check the specific policies of the trade-in program. Some have strict data erasure procedures, while others may not do your research before you trade in a device.
So when it comes to getting rid of old devices, it's essential to be proactive and take steps to protect our data. Don't just assume a factory reset is enough. Multiple formats or professional wiping services are the way to go, right?
Exactly, and remember, secure device disposal isn't just about protecting yourself. It's also about protecting anyone whose data might be on that device.
That's a good point. I've lent my phone to friends and family in the past. I never considered the potential risks.
It's all about raising awareness and being mindful of the potential consequences of our actions in the digital world. Every click, every download, every interaction leaves a trace, and it's up to us to protect our data and privacy.
This has been so eye-opening. I'm definitely going to be more cautious about how I handle my devices and my data going forward. And thank you for all these insights.
You're welcome. Knowledge is power. The more we know, the better we can protect ourselves and those around us.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, from data persistence to social engineering, from free services to secure device disposal. It's clear that cybersecurity is a complex and multifaceted issue, but it's also clear that we can't afford to ignore it. Our digital lives are intertwined with our real lives, and protecting our data is paramount.
Absolutely. And one of the recurring themes throughout all of your source materials is this idea that we need to shift our mindset from being reactive to being proactive.
What do you mean by that?
Instead of waiting for something bad to happen, we need to take steps to prevent it in the first place.
Right, it's like the old saying, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure.
Exactly. And that applies to cybersecurity as well. By being proactive, we can significantly reduce our risk of becoming victims of cybercrime.
So what are some key takeaways that our listeners can implement right away to become more proactive in their approach to cybersecurity?
First and foremost, be aware of the threats, understand how criminals operate, and learn to recognize the red flags. We've discussed many of these red flags today, such as pressure tactics, emotional manipulation, and unusual requests.
Right, and it's also important to remember that criminals are often targeting people, not just devices.
Exactly. Social engineering is a powerful tool, and we need to be aware of the psychological tactics at play.
So it's not just about having the right software or security tools, it's also about being savvy and aware of the human element in cybersecurity.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And second, be proactive in protecting your accounts. Enable two-factor authentication, use strong, unique passwords, and review app permissions regularly.
These are simple steps that can make a big difference, right?
Absolutely. And third, be mindful of your digital footprint. Think before you click download or share information online. Every action leaves a trace, and it's up to us to manage that trace.
So it's about being intentional and responsible in our digital lives, just as we are in our physical lives.
Exactly. And finally, don't be afraid to ask for help if you're unsure about something or if you think you've been compromised. Reach out to a trusted source for assistance.
That's a great point. There are resources available. We don't have to go it alone.
Exactly. There are cybersecurity professionals, government agencies, and even online communities dedicated to helping people stay safe online.
This has been an incredible deep dive. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us.
It's been my pleasure.
Now let's move on to the last part of our deep dive, where we'll wrap up our discussion and leave our listener with some final thoughts to consider.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot in this deep dive. About data persistence, the psychology behind these scams. It's really clear that cybersecurity, it's not just about having the latest software. It's about understanding how our behavior plays into the hands of these digital criminals.
Yeah, it's like we've been saying, it's not if you'll be targeted, it's when winning. Cybercrime is so widespread these days, everyone's a potential target. That's true. But you know what? We don't have to just be helpless victims. We can take steps to protect ourselves like we've learned. Like two-factor authentication, strong passwords, being cautious about what we click on and download. Those are the basics.
Yeah, and let's not forget about securely wiping our devices before we get rid of them. So many people, they don't realize that a simple factory reset just isn't enough.
Yeah, that was a big aha moment for me too. But I think, beyond all the technical tips, the most valuable thing I've learned is awareness. These criminals are getting smarter. They're using social engineering and manipulation tactics that prey on our emotions and trust.
Definitely. And understanding those tactics is key to not falling for them. Remember that story about the chief minister's daughter, that scammer? He was such a master manipulator, playing on her emotions and her desire to help. It's easy to see how anyone could be tricked in a similar situation.
Right. It really makes you think twice about every interaction, every email, every phone call. We have to be more vigilant, especially in a world where scams are becoming so sophisticated.
Absolutely. And, let's not forget about the hidden costs of those free services that we all rely on. It's easy to take them for granted, but we are paying for them with our data, and that information is incredibly valuable to these tech giants.
I used to think that privacy concerns were overblown, but I'm really starting to see the bigger picture. It's not just about, keeping our browsing history secret. It's about understanding how our data is being collected, how it's being used, and how it's potentially being exploited.
Data is the new currency, and we need to be savvy consumers. We need to be asking ourselves, what am I willing to pay for convenience, for access, and what are my privacy boundaries?
That's a great question for all of our listeners to think about. In this data-driven world, what are the trade-offs that we're willing to make? What level of control are we willing to give up?
Yeah, it's a conversation that we all need to be having, not just with ourselves, but with our families, our communities, and even our lawmakers. The future of our digital lives really depends on it.
Absolutely. Well, we've covered a lot of ground today in this deep dive into cybersecurity. And it's clear that this is a complex issue that's always evolving. But the good news is, we don't have to just be passive bystanders. By understanding the threats And taking proactive steps to protect ourselves and engaging in these conversations, we can navigate this digital world safely and confidently.
Yeah, remember, knowledge is power. And the more we know,
Yeah.
the better we're able to protect ourselves
Yeah.
and the people that we care about.
I love that. Knowledge is power. So to our listener, thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive into cybersecurity. We hope that you found it valuable and empowering. It's not about living in fear, but about taking control of your digital life. Keep learning, stay informed, and stay safe out there.